Okay, great. Okay, we're gonna do this take two here. Everybody, thank you for your patience. Good afternoon and welcome to the March 27, 2023 East Bay Regional Park District Park Advisory Committee. It is 4:18 p.m. And Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Member Bruce Henry. Member Marie Arce. Member Andrew Carey. Member James Chang. Member Susie Claxton. Member Linda Deschambeau. Member Irene Dieter. Member Luana España. Present. Member Bob Peoples. Member Dave Mahadevan. Member Rochelle Nason. Member and Chair Carlin Obringer.
I am here, thank you.
Member Bob Reed.
Here.
Member Bob Simmons.
Here.
Member Igor Skerdoff.
Here.
Member Neil Titsui and Vice Chair.
Here.
And Member Roland Williams. And that is the end of our roll call.
Thank you very much. And could you also mention other staff members and I believe we have a board member present as well, please?
My apologies, Member Corkin. I don't know. I'm sorry, I didn't see my apologies. And Member Sharon Corkin is here. And
Wonderful.
as far as staff that are present, we have Deputy General Manager, Dr. Ana Alvarez, Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs, Eric Fueller, AGM of Operations, Lisa Gorgon, and myself, Yuli Padmore, clerking the Park Advisory Committee.
Thank you very much. And I think we also, do we have board member Rosario also present?
Present.
Okay, I think I see you, I think. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. So thank you very much. Okay, and so continuing with the agenda here. So I've got some committee announcements. Today's meeting is pursuant to the Brown Act, and the Park District, East Bay Regional Park District, intends to hold meetings through a hybrid platform. We are trying this for the first time today. Through a hybrid platform of in-person and remote attendance to allow members of the public to participate via remote attendance through the Park District's virtual platform, Zoom. The Park Advisory members and designated staff will, with limited exceptions, and I'm an exception today, I will explain why, participate in person at the Park District headquarters, which is located at 2950 Peralta Oaks Court, Oakland, California. Occasionally, members of the Park Advisory Committee may attend remotely pursuant to the Brown Act as amended by AB 2449. We are providing live audio and video streaming. Members of the public wishing to make a public comment can do so live via Zoom by submitting an email or leaving a voicemail. This information is noted on the agenda. If there are no questions about the meeting, procedures will begin. But I do want to note that I am participating remotely in today's meeting as I am attending a conference in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the City of Concord. And there is no one else in my hotel room at all. And there's certainly no one who's 18 years or older that will be present. So, and I don't see any other Park Advisory Committee members participating remotely at this time. Okay, so moving right along here with our agenda. The next item that we have is approval of our meeting minutes from our February 27th, 2023 meeting. Are there any questions from any of our committee members about the February 27th, 2023 meeting minutes? And I don't see any hands. So I'm going to ask if there is a motion for approval of those meeting minutes. And I apologize, I don't hear anything.
No, you're fine, Chair Obringer. Neil Titsui made a motion and Dev Mahadevan seconded, right? Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you both very much. Madam Secretary, if you could please call the roll.
All right. Bruce Henry,
Abstain since I wasn't a member.
and I will move on since I don't believe Marie Arce and Andrew Carey are present, or James Chang. So Susie Claxton, Linda Deschambeau, Irene Dieter, Luana Espana, Bob Peoples,
Yes.
Dev Mahadevan,
Yes.
Chair Carlin Obringer,
Yes.
Bob Reed, Bob Simmons,
Yes.
Igor Skerdoff, Neil Tetsui, Vice Chair.
Yep.
And that finalizes our roll call.
Okay, great.
Oh,
Thank you.
Sharon Corkin. I'm so sorry.
Okay, well, it sounds like the meeting minutes are approved. Thank you all very much. The next item on our agenda, we have public comment for agenda items that are not on tonight's agenda. And so I see it says podium, so I'm not sure if people are going to come to the podium and make the public comment, but is there anyone present from the public who'd like to make a comment on an agenda item not on the agenda, or on an item not on the agenda?
I believe Kelly Abreu had interest in making a public comment, but I do not see him present.
Okay, so he's not physically present in the room, and I don't see him on the Zoom either.
So perhaps he'll be joining us later.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to close the public comment period and move us on to the next agenda item. Oh, excuse me. I'm terribly sorry, Board Member Rosario. I skipped you and I sincerely apologize. So board member comments. I would like to introduce you for comments and thank you for joining us for this historic hybrid PAC meeting.
Oh, thank you. And because I was here last month, this will be very, very short. You can see in the board minutes, all the comments I made last month. Nothing has really changed, but I wanted to welcome the new members and the new prospective members. And this is a very great opportunity for the board to hear from constituents from all over, and you're a part of that. And but I really wanted to invite you all to, if you can, to participate in the board tours. We had a great tour at Lake Dalvalier on Friday, and we got to see some of the damage firsthand, and we also got to see the uplifting programs and facilities at the Camp Arroyo. And I think the next ones we're going to be highlighting McCosker Creek, which I mentioned last week, that project, as well as the Roberts Pool. And so both those projects have been delayed by the storms, but they're still ongoing. The creek at McCosker is pretty much done. And so it'd be great to see all of you, if you can make all those presentations, because they're, number one, it's great to see everything in person, and also great to see you guys so we can mingle and get to know each other even better. So with that, I'm going to turn it over because you guys have a busy agenda, and I thank you for all of you for your service. Thank you.
you, Board Member Rosario. Does anyone have any questions of the park director?
I could use a reminder as to when the upcoming course.
I think the next is going, the April 7th one got canceled, so I think the next one is May 5th.
That's the McCosker Creek.
I think that's gonna be McCosker Creek, yeah.
And if you could just please repeat the question, because again, it's kind of hard. Maybe if folks would be so kind, if you're going to ask a question or speak, could you, it looks like you've got microphones in the room. Could you maybe hold up the microphone so that the people on Zoom can hear what your question was?
Okay, little green lights on and everything.
Now I can hear you, Igor. Thank you. And now I know who's talking. I didn't know. I just saw a mask.
I was just asking Dee to tell us the date of the McCosker Creek tour.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I think I see Luana raising her hand.
We consider doing some of the field trips on Saturdays. Is that a possibility? To make them more accessible?
So the field trips are planned, I believe, like a year in advance. So I think they're set for the year. But we can definitely share your interests with the operations team.
And Luana, we do a PAC field trip, and that is on a Saturday. So we will have an opportunity to do that. I believe we have it scheduled for September, but I'll have to double check and get back.
Thank you.
Great. Anybody else with questions for Director Rosario?
I think Irene Dieter has a question.
Okay,
Hi.
please.
I just have a quick question. Do you have any updates on any damage that was done from last Tuesday's storm?
But the currently like Lake Devalier is closed. But the water is receded significantly because they've been releasing water. So it's now down to 704, but it got up to 720. So which flooded the new visitor center, which I thought when I first saw it is like, there's no way it's going to get up this high. But and then all the docks are no longer attached. They're in the middle of the lake. There's the campground is underneath about 4 inches of silt. Sunol continues to be closed. The road, Geary Road into the park, there's a huge slide there. So they're trying to coordinate with PG&E and Pacific Bell before they can actually do work on that road. And who knows what's going to happen with this next storm. And I think Anthony Chabot, the South Road to Redwood Road, that's going to be closed for some time. That whole road slipped out. But you can still access the park from the Redwood Road side, however, and not but the Oakland side, but the campground continues to be closed. So I think those are the most, I think those are the only parks closed with significant damage. But there's the last windstorm we had, there's hundreds and hundreds of trees that down, as we know. So our park rangers are quite busy. And so we just hope that they're working diligently to try to get those trails open and hopefully stay safe. Thank you.
And I did see AGM of Operations, Lisa Gorgon, pop on. I don't know if she had additional input. I will say that I know we have at least $11 million worth of damage, and I'm sure that number is going to triple by the time we actually find everything and count everything.
Okay, thank you. Oh, it looks like you'd like to speak. Please do.
Oh, this is Lisa Gorgon, Assistant General Manager of Operations. I just wanted to concur with Director Rosario. The damage to Del Valle and Redwood Canyon Golf Course, those have really been for the past maybe the first 10 of the atmospheric rivers. The last windstorm that we had on Tuesday, the majority of the damage was really just because of the wind. So and as Director Rosario said, just with the trees being down. So we're getting ready for this next atmospheric river on our way. But we're, as Director Rosario said, we keep our website updated with alerts and closures. There's a specific page that identifies that, so you can go right to that to see what's been affected.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else who's in the room who would like to ask a question of Director Rosario? Okay, I'm looking in the box, and I don't see anybody. I did see Kelly. Kelly, did you want to make a public comment on this item?
No, public comment on public comments after the director's comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're gonna close this agenda item and I'm gonna reopen the public comment since I had skipped item number 3. So Kelly, please go ahead. You have 3 minutes to make your general public comment.
Thank you. We're always hearing about the need for good governance and prudence and adaptive management. And you would think that would involve some, basic principles like that when people want to erect barricades at Park Gate, that should take more consultation, more effort, more planning, more talking, it should be more difficult, more involved than opening the doors at the Park Gate. But here in Fremont, that's not how things are done. 2 years ago, the Park District erected prison-style fencing, prison barricades at Pickering Avenue, Vargas Plateau Regional Parks. That was, of course, it only lasted a few weeks because local residents were up in arms. They understandably so. Now that the Park District is considering opening up that gate, formally opening up that very same gate, they're working with the city to send out a letter to local residents. We don't know how local. Is it within 50 feet? Is it within 500 feet? We don't know how local, but very local, and ask them how they feel about opening up the gate. Of course, no such communications. No one thought there was any need to communicate when they were erecting the barricades. That was done completely, out of the blue. This is the kind of it's a very, in engineering, some of you may have studied engineering. That's what they call the hysteresis. Hysteresis, when you go one way, it goes easy. When you come back, it goes a different path and it's harder. So there's a hysteresis in the law, a disturbance in the force, and things need to be done completely backwards from what is happening here. I'll close with the comments with a quote from the BBC production of Les Miserables by Andrew Davies a couple of years ago. This barricade is made of more than just cobblestones and bedsteads. It is made of ideals, of hope, of love of our fellow man. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. I don't see anyone else from the public with a hand raised in Zoom, and it doesn't look like there's any public members in the room. Again, I feel like Dr. Seuss a little bit tonight with Zoom and room. So now I am going to close the regular public comment as we've given ample opportunity for that, and move into our presentation. So we've got a very exciting item tonight. We're going to be hearing about the 30 by 30 conservation movement from Dr. Alvarez, and we also have Eric Fueller and Lisa Baldinger who are going to be joining this presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to the three of you.
Thank you so much, PAC Chair, Dr. Ana Alvarez, Deputy General Manager. Let's see. Can we try this again? Yes. Okay, so there might be an echo here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today here. It's been quite a while since I've been back to the Parks Advisory Committee. So I would like to echo the sentiments from our chair and our board member, Director Rosario, in welcoming the new board, the new PAC members, as well as upcoming new PAC members. The Parks Advisory Committee serves a very critical role in the Parks District in being able to funnel the perspectives of the communities at large of the 2.9 million people that our board of directors serve in the mission delivery of the Park District. So it's a real privilege for me to join you tonight and share with you a little bit of information on this important movement that's taking place. And in starting the presentation, I would like to acknowledge your contributions and your service by sharing with you a video that really inspires and sets the tone, and it frames the space in which we're about to have a conversation. So with that, Yuli, do you mind starting the video? The sound might be a little off, so if we could pay close attention, I think you'll appreciate what's being said by Morgan Freeman.
One day, we will wake up to find that the energy that powers the alarm clock came from the breeze through the trees the night before. And we will go to work that morning riding the rays of the sun. It will light our cities and power our businesses. It will warm our homes and cool our workplaces. It will reduce sources of conflict and fuel our economies. It will connect us all. It won't scar the land or poison the seas. The food we eat will be good for our bodies and good for the planet. And the weather that day won't make us worry for tomorrow. There will be more jobs and less disease. The sea level will stop rising. And species will stop dying. The question is, how do we get to that day from where we are today? All 7.3 billion of us. We start by deciding that beyond our doubts and differences, such a day truly exists. And that is something each of us can do today. We can make today the day we stop thinking that the changes required to get there are impossible and beyond us, and start realizing that they are not only possible, but what the future requires of us. We must stop turning from the warnings of science and fear and denial, and instead turn toward the solutions and partnerships we need. We can make today the day we stop pointing at each other in blame, and instead chart a new course together. We have never faced a crisis this big, but we have never had a better opportunity to solve it. We have everything we need to wake up to a different kind of world. We need our leaders to be brave and their choices to be bold. They will either remember us as the generation that destroyed its home, or the one that finally came to respect it. We have every reason in the world to act. We can't wait until tomorrow. This is our only home. You can choose today to make a world of difference.
Thank you, Yuli. And I think that that day here has come to the Park District, and actually the day has been here with the Park District since 1934. The Park District's mission has been truly driven to conserve the natural world, preserve the natural biodiversity and ecological systems that live with 125,000 acres of public land. And so the time has also come in California where all the stars have lined up perfectly, where we have the resources that are being put together to escalate or accelerate the work that we're trying to accomplish since 1934. And so that day that Morgan Freeman keeps referring to has certainly, not only did it arrive in 1934 with many of you, and the Park District was truly created by the residents living in this area specifically to preserve the hills, the East Bay Hills, and in partnership with UC Berkeley. So it's a privilege to have you here with us, Neil, because today, almost 90 years later, we're still working together, UC Berkeley, the residents, the citizens like yourselves that you represent, and the Park District elected officials to preserve and conserve that natural world that really what all life really depends on. To give a little bit of context, and I know that I'm preaching to the choir, but it's important to remember that we're actually, California is 1 out of 36 Mediterranean climates in the entire world, where all natural life truly depends on. So these are the life supporting systems for us to be able to have oxygen to breathe, water to drink. And out of the 36 bioregions in the world, California is 1 out of 36. We're also 1 out of 7 hotspots, biodiversity hotspots in the entire world. What does that mean? That the majority of the species, plant materials, and animal species are linked, or their survival is linked somehow, interconnected with our ability to steward and preserve this natural world. And it's quite a responsibility. And it's difficult to understand that the actions that we take today really will have repercussions that will come after for many, many years, even after we're all gone. I like to start my presentations by explaining that the beauty that we enjoy today, those gorgeous landscapes, those iconic trees, those beautiful views that we all admire, especially here in the East Bay, those were the outcomes or the consequences of good planning, good advocacy, and good decision-making in national preservation or ecological management of many people way before us, 50 years ago, 75 years ago. That's the reason why we're enjoying what we're enjoying today. And every action that we take today, this precise day, can contribute to taking action for that preservation of the natural world, or for the demise and the peril of that natural world. Whether we're advocating administration out in the front lines of climate change, out in the parks, or making those decisions for land acquisition and those policy decisions like our board did a few days ago, that everything that we purchase has to be sustainable, has to be locally sourced, and it has to have an environmental ethic that guides the decisions in what we do. So that's the difficult part. To conceptualize all these pieces is nice. I'm speaking to an echo chamber at times, I feel, but where it becomes important is how we do our work and operationalizing and taking action. And that's where it becomes a little tricky because we all have different priorities. But I wanted to share with you how the entire state of California is leading the United States in being able to prioritize the preservation and the conservation of the natural world in a different way. So that's what takes us to California 30 by 30, which is a movement. It's more than a policy. It's more than a decision by a few elected officials. It's actually a movement that is changing the way our relationship with nature, from the elected officials to the land operators to the folks that recreate and use the land. And it's a global movement. California is not alone. Actually, there's a decision globally that 30% of the earth and 30% of its waters will be preserved and set aside by 2030. And so we have 72 countries that have already aligned themselves with this 30 by 30 movement for the survival of the species. And the species includes the Homo sapiens. all of us in this room. And so there's an urgency to keep up with the changing climate with now the terminology. And we have debated even here at the Park District, how do we refer to climate so that it resonates with the voters, so that it doesn't scare the new generation of young ones, the children. So we talked about, is it climate change? Is it a changing climate? Now the terminology is adopted by very high ranking institutions like the Nature Conservancy, the United Nations, President Biden's administration, is called the climate crisis, because the time to act is that window is closing every single moment, every single day it closes. And so there's an urgency to keep up with the changing climate and also to be able to mitigate the most adverse impacts. We were all worried, and I appreciate your question. What is the latest impact from the latest storm that we just experienced a few days ago? And what are we supposed to expect tomorrow? Knowing that all of our soils are completely saturated, knowing that we have over $10 million of damages across our land. So what else is going to happen? Knowing that we were having a board meeting just a few days ago, and for the first time that I've been working here, 3 trees failed right here, almost about to hit the cars of our elected officials. So the worrying of the weather, it's something that is universal and it's very real and it has come to roost. When I was in the profession of understanding climate science almost 20 years ago, the climatic models that we were looking at and the terminology that I was learning and the new abnormal that I was discovering as the science was barely coming together, those models were in the 2100, not in my lifetime. That was 20 years ago. And I never thought that I would be here experiencing those models, knowing and seeing how the wildfire can move 3 seconds, 1 football field every 3 seconds. That's what happened in California. First time that we have ever experienced this type of fire and fire behavior nowhere in the world. 3 seconds, 1 football field. The firestorms and the weather that was being created by the fires that we're experiencing in North Bay. And that I will always remember, I hope you do as well, that you won't forget. That morning that while we were dealing with COVID, with a global pandemic, we woke up to an orange apocalyptic sky here in the Bay Area. And that was a very eerie moment as we were dealing with the pandemic, a 100-year lightning storm, 9 regional parks burning at the same time, and an orange sky after 15 to 20 days of the worst air quality, worse than China, here in California. That's a new reality. And never in my lifetime, I thought that those were the challenges of my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. And in fact, those are the realities of all of us today. So there's great urgency to be able to put into place what we call nature-based solutions. And what that means by nature-based solutions is to be able to build a habitat and be able to utilize those ecological services that nature has in place, because nature has all of the solutions before we turn to man-made solutions. Sea level rise is a perfect example. Vice President Kamala Harris was here not too long ago, last year, invited the East Regional Park District to be center stage along with UC Berkeley. About 90 UC Berkeley students were invited through Dean Actuary to share in that moment to hear Vice President Harris saying that nature-based solutions is what we need in a window of time by 2030. So we have about 7 years left, because what would happen after 7 years from today, we will no longer be able to put into play those ecological systems, but rather they will have to be man-built engineering systems to be able to mitigate for all these adverse impacts. To put it in layman's term, our wetlands restoration will be null and void, because we will not be able to create those horizontal levees to slow down the water and to slow down the flooding. But instead, we're going to be discussing engineering levees like you will find today in New Orleans. So the Bay Area will lose its character, its ethical place, and we will impact a lot of migratory shoreline birds that are not only endemic to California, but around the world through the Pacific Flyway. So Kamala Harris came to come and speak at the Presidio, invited the East Regional Park District along other great conservation partners, and said that California is leading the way. California is leading President Biden's climate and environmental policies, which are tied to the Inflation Act. And she was very proud of her roots. And she also shared a moment that I wanted to share with you, that in her role as being the vice president, she has had the privilege to speak to astronauts while they're in space in real time. And she gets online with them. And the one question that she asks is, can you see the planet Earth? And can you tell me what do you see? And she says that the universal response from all of the astronauts has been how fragile we are and how interconnected we really are. We only have one planet, one home. This is it. And so if we are not taking care of those natural systems where our life depends on, we're in a very difficult moment in time, and we have 7 years, and it's really all of us coming together and putting aside our differences, and most importantly, taking urgent action. And this is what 30 by 30 really speaks to. Next. So on October 2020, Governor Newsom issued a nature-based solution executive order, advancing biodiversity in his administration as a top priority, elevating the role of nature in the fight against climate change. And this was a long time coming, only because San Francisco and the East Regional Park District and other area-based organizations already knew, and the science had already shown us, that is the ecological systems that we are stewarding that are really going to clean the air and filter our water and be able to slow down the flooding that's coming in through those king tides and through those extreme weather patterns that we're seeing. That in fact, the forest that surrounds the East Bay, all those forest lands, yes, their carbon sink and they're sequestering the carbon to be able to have clean air, but they also can be, if they're not managed correctly, can release all that carbon, and actually they become a liability and a risk factor to be able to, when fire does burn again in these hills. And I say that very solemnly, not to scare anyone, but fire will burn. It's a matter of how it will burn. So we have to do everything that's within our power to be able to manage the fire behavior so that we can give a fighting chance for people to save their lives and a fighting chance for the land to recover and the species to recover. That's what it's all about. So wildfires continues to be the #1 priority for the Park District. And I'm going to share with you how the governor's nature-based executive order is actually accelerating our work in this area, and how this 30 by 30 movement has given the resources that we need to do the work that we need to do. Next. We also know that there's federal action. So right after Governor Gavin Newsom issued his executive order, shortly thereafter in 2021, President Biden also issued an executive order asking for federal action in the America the Beautiful. And that's such a gorgeous piece of legislation. I won't go into great detail, but I will ask staff to come back, the government and legislative team, to share with you the details of the America the Beautiful principle, because that's a momentum piece of legislation that's going to really a watershed moment in our federal legislation to be able to catch up with the work that was deferred or delayed in the past administration, but also to accelerate the impact or our ability to really, again, turn the corner and be able to find those solutions. And the federal, our president is asking for 8 basic principles, which most of them are already here in the East Regional Park District and certainly have been in place in California and most definitely in Northern California in the Bay Area. We already know that it's really through inclusion, green job creation, and the community health to be able to ideally address all these pieces and accelerate what we call climate smart preservation and management of public lands. The gorgeous lands that you see in Marin County and in Northern California, in the North Bay area, most of you should know that they came about precisely on the relationships and the stewardship of the agricultural farmers. And it's through planning decisions in being able to preserve and conserve all that land. So again, decisions that were made 50 years ago, good planning decisions. Next. And so California's framework, it brings together over 200 something strategies, which we can go into great detail. And I invite you to learn about those, and I'll share with you some resources. But the thing that's monumental here in that watershed moment is that Governor Newsom is coming in and saying, we're shifting our models. We're no longer doing preservation or conservation the way we've known it in the past, because that model does not align and is not the right model to be able to push us forward those nature-based solutions as quickly as we can, as fast as we can, to be able to manage what's coming or what's already here in front of us. So the new model of conservation really brings together, if you want to understand it, it's a three-legged stool. It's about protecting and restoring biodiversity, wildlife, habitat, and plant material, which we've done great, and we've known that. That's part of the old model, the old way of conservation. What's new here in terms of a model of new conservation is about addressing issues of equity, being able to say that if we really are going to advance all of these pieces, we have to acknowledge that we have pushed people out of the land. We have to reconnect people with nature, and we have to do it in a way where we're addressing environmental, social injustices. Because if we need to find solutions to understanding that this changing climate that we've created, man-made, is actually impacting the most vulnerable communities that have the least amount of resources to be able to respond and be able to survive after those extreme weather events that we see, or those extreme natural events that we're seeing. Point in case, I hope that you're learning from, as I do every day, what happened in the North Bay with the wildfires, and all the ranch hands and the farm workers in Napa Valley, in Bodega Bay, in all those areas were primarily migrant workers, Latino monolinguals, and they were the last ones to leave. They were still trying to save the harvest or the crops, and they're the ones with the least amount of resources, and the ones that actually had the most destructions in terms of what they lost in the wildfires, and the most exposure to all the toxic and all the fumes, and the least amount of protective equipment to be able to save what they were trying to save. That's the story of what happened from an equity perspective of the wildfires in the North Bay. That's a story that's mostly you don't hear about it, but that's really what we're dealing with. And what the farm workers did after they saw that they could not save what they were trying to save, they got in their cars wherever they could, and they ran to the shorelines, to the Pacific Ocean. They were not running to the American Red Cross shelter. They were running to what they knew where they can get some respite, to the shoreline. And so we have to address those equity issues if we're really going to have an honest and candid resolution and solution to all these issues. And we also, our governor is saying that while we address equity and we preserve our biodiversity, we're going to build resiliency to those changing climates, and we're going to do climate smart land management. So we're doing preservation management, not for the sake of the science, not for the sake of the beauty, but rather because we understand how we're all interconnected and how our own life survival depends on the quality of that ecological system that may be found on public lands. So we're going to build better, and we're going to take our responsibility, not only to put those trails where we want to access the trails and include access to all, and by all, but we're going to do it in an environmentally sustainable way. So when we see the 14th atmospheric river, that we will not continue to see the land erosion that we're seeing. So that we're going to understand how we put in our culverts, and that we allow for the migratory corridors for plant material and wildlife. Because that's we just have to be really smart and think about all the complexities and all the pieces that come together. So it's also called a multi-benefit approach to land management that brings in recreation, equity, access, environmental justice, habitat restoration, as well as building resiliency for an unknown future. Next. And that's hard to do. That's very, very hard to do. That's what we've been embarking in the last year. The East Regional Park District has had a front seat and participated at the table And so let's define what is to be conserved on the land side. So we're saying land and coastal waters that have durability. So meaning how we manage them, how we protect them, that they will be in perpetuity, provide that service or be able to perform in that fashion. So it has to be durable. And so not all land counts and not all water counts. And that's a very difficult conversation to be had, because if we start creating islands of pristine habitat, we start creating islands where there's no public access because we want to preserve the filtration of the water in the watershed. It may not have durability because that's not the way science, that's not nature. If you create an island, the island will die. So it's all interconnected. So even the natural world that still lives in highly urbanized areas, even those areas actually have contributed to the durability of the most pristine habitats. Why? Because species do not recognize jurisdictional lines, neither do extreme weather events. So what's happening in Glen Canyon in San Francisco, in terms of the migratory birds and the butterflies, actually have an impact on the shoreline along the San Francisco Bay, and the East Regional Park District is the largest landowner of shoreline, 55 miles of shoreline. So what happens on the other side of the water impacts us here as well. So we're all interconnected. Next. And so the state in the Park District has been partnering with the state for the last 2 years since the 2020's executive order. It's taken us, it took about 2 years to finish a pathways planning document to get, how do we get to 30 by 30? And this was done through a very robust public process with over 5,000, believe it or not, over 5,000 public speakers of many public meetings across over Zoom, but intended to reach all of California's. And this pathway document was released in April of 2022 on Earth Day. And these are the 10 basic principles. And the good news, I won't go through all of them, but the good news is that the Park District has already engaged and has a history of work in most of these 10 principles or framework that was put together. I also wanted to share with you what the framework is for the state as they think, how do we preserve 30% of California's lands and 30% of California's waters in the next 7 years. So the Wade Crowfoot, our secretary for the Natural Resources Secretary for California, along with Dr. Jennifer Norris and many other appointed individuals by the governor, engage in a very robust, systematic approach to understanding how do we all work together, how do we collaborate, and it really comes down to partnerships. And so a 30 by 30 partnership coordinating committee was created at the state level, along with the 30 by 30 advisory committee. There's the 5 different entities that all fit into that. And there's including the Biodiversity Council, our tribal partners, the Ocean Protection Council, and regional working groups and coalitions, as well as the Biodiversity Network. And so the California Biodiversity Network, next. The California Biodiversity Network is a recognized by the governor to say that to be able to bring forward the science. But let's look at, and I'll speak to it in a moment, but let's look at what the statewide looks like. We already did in the last 2 years a thorough understanding of the lands that are protected, either through easements or perhaps through acquisitions by public agencies and other types of lands that are protected. And we see that 24% of California's lands have already been protected. So we're looking at about 6% that remains. And that is not an easy number. It's a very difficult number, but we are ready to get it going. And where the majority of the work that remains is in the coastal waters, which is not surprising. But that's where it gets very, very complex and very tricky. And we contribute to all of that as we are the watershed and the water quality and the water that runs off into the ocean. 40% of California's water actually goes through East Bay lands.
Sorry, how much?
40%. So it's not insignificant. So everything that we do here really matters. Next. So the East Regional Park District was a key partner, identified ahead of all of this, brought to the table by the key regulatory agencies and the governor and the California Natural Resources Agency, and said, we're going to model after what happened here in 1934. After many conversations, that's really what it boiled down to, because it was a moment in time when it was recognized that the California Natural Resources Agency will not be prescribing how to manage and restore lands across many topographical climates and topography. I should say topography in California. So it's a regional effort, and it has to be at the local level. And so they're turning, and they use the East Regional Park District as the touting example of how it can work. And so this is the picture that I wanted to share with you. It's a picture that moves me every time. This was a picture I took at Coyote Hills. And this was a school group that was visiting during a tour with the board. And as much as I love new buildings, new community facilities, new spaces, and the preservation of landscapes, I always ask, and where are the children? Where are the people? So I asked, can I see a school group here? Because these are the future stewards of all this land, of all that beloved work of all of us here. So I always say, if you really care for the land and the species and all nature, the natural world, this is the stewards of the land, and they represent California's demographical change. So they need to understand the work that has happened here 90 years ago, and why it matters today, why it mattered then, why it matters today, and why it matters tomorrow. So this is a real picture, and this is what I think of in terms of DEI work in that specific regional park. It's not about the people that look like me. It's about the people that look like the folks that live around that regional park. That school group, there were 7 languages that were spoken as I talked to the children. Not one of them was Spanish, which is my native language. And the common languages were English, German, Farsi, Arabic, Moroccan, Egyptian. And I said, well, imagine that and they were all multilingual children. None of them were my monolingual. But I thought, if we only had a sign that says welcome in Arabic, to make the connections with their families and with the children, to acknowledge that we understand who they are and that they belong in those spaces. What a different relationship that would be. And what I just said, it's people will say, okay, Ana, you're going to talk about DEI. Perhaps we can do more science in Spanish. No, when I speak of inclusion, this is what I'm talking about. Because I'm thinking 20, 30 years ahead. And of course, Spanish, but it's not at the exclusion of this. Next. We also saw that we looked at our lands and we said, using the term and the definition of durability in the 30 by 30 movement, what is the percentage that can be counted towards that 30%? And only 42% of our lands count at this moment. So we're going through a very aggressive review of our land. And the reason why, and believe it or not, it may not surprise some of you, because we have not kept up with the entries on in the statewide data as we acquire new property of the species that live on that land, on the plant and animal species. So we have lacked the capacity, the staffing capacity, to be able to share all that data and capture all that data and upload all that data. So it's again rethinking, if we're going to count and we're going to have this in perpetuity, we have to do the work correctly. So I'm hoping to come back at a later point and tell you in our latest review, how are we doing? Because I would say that 99.9% of all of our shoreline and land should count towards the 30%. Next. And then I spoke about the California Biodiversity Network, and the reason why that matters is because Secretary Crawford and Dr. Jennifer Norris created the California Biodiversity Network to say, we need a space where we can advance the science, so we're making policy decisions based on science, not debating and losing the opportunity of being able to make an impact towards and take the right steps of what needs to be done here by getting lost in the narrative of the politics of different agendas, as it happened to us not long ago, where there was a moment in time when I was speaking publicly, sharing nationally that with President Obama, that we were going to be able to have all these resources coming our way, that money was going to be raining for public agencies to preserve and conserve all this land. And we lost that we had a different administration. And what happened was that all the databases of all of the climate knowledge that we had at that moment that were publicly available through gateways like NASA, they all disappeared and the money froze. And I ended up being stuck in a debate yet again, a national debate of climate deniers. And so I'm done engaging on and we're not debating the science. We're moving and taking action on the science. And we're seeing the impacts for those climate deniers. So the California Biodiversity Network was created, and it brought together academic institutions, private and public, the UC system, the Cal State system, the private Stanford University, and also coalitions and land agencies and the land trust. And we all came together to be able to explore the science, identify the research gaps that still need to be done in multiple areas. So we were able to publish Appendix D of California 30 by 30 Pathways, which identifies the research gaps in the environmental sciences, but also the social sciences. First time that we see the intersectionality of social sciences correctly documented with environmental sciences, and it's not one or the other. So the old conservation movement or model was very binary. It's either preserved and protected or it's developed. And that's the beginning of the story. That's just the beginning. It's about the understanding the intersection of people's relationship to the land, the access, the environmental justice issues, as well as the actions to preserve and manage the land. And these are all managed lands. So all those things have to be rooted in science. Together Bay Area is another key regional partner that contributes to the California Biodiversity Network. Next, in the East Bay Regional Park District, I had a key seat at the table. I was very honored to be asked to serve on the steering committee. While I was dealing with the pandemic, I was also having very candid and sobering conversations. How do you operationalize 30 by 30? And let me tell you that I came in at the table, and I'm not apologizing. And I said, why such a odd number, great tagline and soundbite, 30 by 30 by 2030. But who said that we needed 30%? Because I belong to the Half Earth movement, which is 50% of the land. And I still say, why 50%? But the fact that we as humans, as the greatest species in the world, that we can actually bisect the world this way, there's something wrong with that. But I said, okay, fine, I'll sit and I'll start with 30%. I'll contribute to that. And I said, and I'm going to contribute what my background is in climate science and administration and planning and policy. That's my background. But the fact that I am a person of color, and I was born in Mexico, in Mexico City, and I was raised very differently, and I'm bicultural, and my children are biracial, I will take a moment in my career and I will speak about the issues of equity. But I am not a subject matter expert. I am not, and that it's a discipline on its own, but I will stand up and I will represent, and I will bridge the communication so that we can work together and bridge the social sciences with environmental sciences. And so we created through the California Biodiversity Network, the Equity Forum. And we said, we're not going to have a round table, but because equity crosses across all of the round tables, whether we're looking at the science that we're collecting with a key partner with the California Academy of Sciences, with UC Berkeley and other universities, or stewardship, or the informatics for the climatic models, all of that an equity lens can run across all through that. So we're going to elevate equity at its highest level. We're not going to cut it out and separate it, but it will be embedded. And guess who wanted to partner with me, which is another great privilege and a great moment in my personal career, which I'm very grateful for, is that Director John Jarvis, who serves as the Executive Director of the Institute of Biodiversity, Parks and People at UC Berkeley, said, you know, Ana, you don't have to do this alone. I'll do it with you. I go, thank you. because DEI and equity work is not at the exclusion of white people. And because I'm not naive, I understand the context in which I exist and where I'm doing my work, a male voice will help. And it helps that he was a former National Park Services director and knows even more than I do on climate science and all these issues and the intersection of all these issues, policy, land management, and the climate. And we were also joined by Ify Sanders with USC and the civic engagement, or the Center for, what's it called? Let's see. Who's a California Coastal Commissioner, but she's also representing the School of Civic Engagement at USC. And she brought very sobering information and the latest science on how we engage our citizens and residents and community members in policy decisions. Next. Since then, and because we did all that work, the first convening after the California Natural Resources Agency and the governor released the pathways to 30 by 30 and said, here's our planning document that will guide us how do we get to 30% by 2030. He wanted to celebrate and made a convening of key players and contributors to all of this. And he says, I'm going to do it in the San Francisco Bay Area that leads California, and in the Bay Area, it's the East Bay that leads California. So he did his convening at Roberts Regional Park in April of 2022. And he spoke, tweeted, through social media, did all to make the point that we were modeling after the movement of 1934 by the East Regional Park District. So here's a picture of the people that came to join him at Roberts Regional Park, from representing the California Association of Land Trust, representing community-based organizations, academic institutions, as well as the nonprofit sector and other governmental, regional, and statewide agencies, regulatory and non-regulatory. Next. So here's another picture of celebrating and saying, can we do this? And are we ready to do this? And are we going to be able to take that audacious, bold step that we need to? And are we going to continue fighting one another about climate deniers and what happened here? Or are we just going to dive in very quickly and do the work? And we say, we're going to do the work. Next. And in doing the work, we also contribute, and we were invited, believe it or not, and this is all that you represent here at the East Regional Park District. We're also contributing to the global conversation. So we were part of a conversation that took place with France, who is a partner at the UN, and they're doing exactly the same thing as we're doing. And so there was a convening in San Francisco with a panel of moderators of what's happening in California in comparison to France and how we can help one another. And you see here, John Jarvis and Dr. Jennifer Norris sitting at the table, as well as a professor from the University of Berkeley's Law School on Environmental Law. And I'm sorry, Neil, I forgot her name. Amazing woman. Yes. And here again, leading the world and leading the conversation. This was streamed via Zoom internationally. Next. And these are my pictures. I would say, here's another event in May. After we did a kickoff event with the Natural Resources Agency and the governor. The governor could not join us, but he joined via Zoom live. So he's speaking to the crowd, and it was a big kickoff event. And it was a call to all California agencies, partners, stakeholders to come and start doing the work. Next. You see front and center on the left-hand side, you see the East Regional Park District contingency. We had a group of folks. These are assistant general managers and chiefs and senior staff who were convened to create the Park District's 30 by 30 leadership working group. And they're hearing firsthand the news of the work that has been done and a way to kick off a good way to kick off the work as called by Governor Newsom. And this is what we heard the first time. And we heard from several tribal leaders that actually an agreement had been signed moments behind those doors, moments before, to turn over the operation of a state park to an indigenous tribe for the first time. So we're no longer doing the model that we used to do before in dealing with our indigenous communities, and the model that, as I hear it, as people like to express it. You come along and we'll tell you, and you do what we tell you to do. That's not the model that we're looking at. We're doing a very different model where we're bringing in cultural practices, acknowledging our wrongs and acknowledging the past so that we can move forward together expeditiously with urgency. And I have to do, you should know as members of the PAC that it was former board member Nancy Skinner. At that time, she was chairing the state's budget committee, and she actually did a huge shout out live via Zoom at the kickoff event, and actually used the East Bay Regional Park District as the example of what happened here in 1934, and gave great kudos to people like all of you in this room, and spoke of amazing stories of how it can work if a regional approach through the local level with citizens like yourselves and residents like yourself that can actually make the difference. Next. And she announced for the first time at that event, at that time, this was back in May of 2022, of close to $600 million that was being set aside. And actually, I'm sorry, $1.2 billion that were being set aside through that budget. And they share those numbers. Those numbers are not in effect anymore because since then that we have heard that we have a $25 billion deficit. And the governor's in his latest release for his proposed budget is using that Inflation Act money that's coming from the federal government to restore some of the money that has been lost. So we're down, we were from $64 billion towards nature-based solutions, with all that money coming in through local agencies for acquisition, for habitat restoration, to address ecological and forest conservation, as well as address wildlife corridors and address issues of equity. All that was restored to $54 billion by using the Inflation Act. And I'm going to ask my staff to come back at a later date and walk you through the numbers because you should really understand the numbers. I left the slide here just to make the point how everything shifts and it's a moving target. But nonetheless, what's really the key takeaway is that unlike any other time in the history of California, not even through bond measures, was there such a large allocation of resources and policy coming together in one momentum time. Never before, including at the federal level. And the East Bay Regional Park District was at the front of the table and we did really well. We have done really well and we still need to do a lot more work to secure more resources. Next. So the takeaway in going through that journey is that, and I'm distilling a lot of 2-3 years of conversations, is that as Secretary Crawford inspired all of us, the audacious is not only possible, but it's necessary if we're really going to make this a reality and we're going to turn the corner. Prioritizing nature-based solutions, not by man engineering solutions. So next. So we came back and we said the audacious is not only possible, but it's necessary. And we have an amazing group of people here working at the Park District. Unlike most public agencies, we have a single mission. We're a single mission organization, an organization over 1,000 employees, and we all share values, which is so unlike most public agencies. We have a very strong environmental value that we all share. We have differences of opinion on how we get that done, but we all share the same values of DEI and environmental ethic, like you. But it's just how we get the work done that were the differences of opinion. So we said we're going to convene a 30 by 30 leadership working group, permeable, movable. It's not through hierarchy, bless you, but rather who wants to be at the table and who wants to be audacious and who's ready to do the work. And we're going to reimagine how we've been doing our work, and there are no sacred cows. And we're inviting everyone at the Park District who wants to come and who would like to share what they think is necessary, what their passion projects may be, including the people at the front lines who are experiencing the parks in real time, as well as the people who are putting these types of meetings together, because everybody counts and we want to hear from everyone. We had a very strong showing, and Eric's going to share more as to what happened in that room. It was voluntarily. People were still hesitant to come. You see, most of them are masked. And we had close to 100 people, including board members. So Director Rosario was there. It was a very organic event, and we just wanted to hear from them directly. because we're approaching our work differently. And we do want to hear that audacious idea. We want the outside thinking, and we want to hear what they've been wanting to do, or if nothing else, what's not working. Because we're not approaching the work the same way we have, thinking that we're going to have a different outcome in less than 7 years. That's not rational. Next. And so here's some more pictures of the event. Next. And here they are sharing the groups. Here's Director Rosario. Thank you. He was sitting on the DEI table. And we heard some difficult conversations that we still continue to have. We hear from the park district at large that says, if you really want to protect nature and the natural world, Anna, then don't let people in. They literally tell me those things. And yeah, I welcome those. Let's have the conversation. But if I don't let people in, then they're going to be the taxpayers. They're the taxpayers. So how are they not going to understand? So we need to let them in responsibly. We need to shepherd them in. And next. And all of their input is being put together, and we're activating and rethinking our work. And it's all aligning with our current work plans and our master plan that's the beginning of the master plan conversation, as well as the board priorities. So the intersection of all those pieces. Next. It was an extremely well-received event, and I'm very proud of all the people that participated. And then from the leadership group, we said that we're going to work with one goal in mind, which is to accelerate the pace and scale of our impact. We're not reinventing our mission. Our mission is golden. It aligns perfectly, and what we've been doing is just in alignment with all the policy and all the expectations and the planning documents. But now what we're going to focus on is accelerating the pace and the scale of our impact. And we're doing that in two ways. We're looking internally within our organization and in a partnership framework, or externally. So internally, I already spoke to you about we're empowering a frontline staff, and I share with you the kickoff event. And we also gave them a grant program of at the end of 2030 will be $2.9 million, about $250, $250,000 a year, where they can submit projects that are important to them and tell us what they need. And they don't have to go through the budget process, through the hierarchy and the bureaucracy of how budgets get created, because we want to give them a fast pass, an get out of jail card, or what's it, Monopoly? Skip jail and go straight to the other one. So what do you need, basically? Yeah, get out of here, yes. And we're empowering them. And there's more that we're going to share with you. It's a body of work in progress. But the external piece, and that's where you come in. I share with you a little bit about the state and federal funding opportunities that we're looking at and managing, and we're changing our model of state and federal advocacy. And the board legislative committee was very supportive, and so was our board, where we're doing multiple, we're partnering with multiple advocates, not just one. And we are enhancing and expanding, amplifying our strategy. And then we also are amplifying our regional partnerships for on-the-ground projects. So we're partnering with new partners that we never had in the past, and old partners that continue to be critical to our work. And wildfire, just give you an example, continues to be of primary importance. And we saw, and Director Rosario perhaps will tell you, or has already shared with you, the work that we're doing, the pilot project that we're doing at Anthony Chabot with the biochar and the carbonator, to be able to expedite the fuel vegetation management with the eucalyptus forest, and we're advancing the science. And so we have new partners that we never had before. We just issued the largest contract in the history of the park district to one vendor, $8 million, to accelerate the fuel vegetation management. And then also another piece is the land acquisition, and with the Coastal Conservancy, with the latest land, the 600 acres that we acquired in what's the name of the location, Eric?
Finley Road Ranch.
The Finley Road Ranch property, another perfect 30 by 30, and it's counting automatically. Most pristine, checked all the boxes, and we went in and we accelerated its acquisition after many, many years of watching it, getting ready for it. So it's not I'm not saying that we're magically creating these things. We're just accelerating the last steps of the good work of many people before us. Another restoration project to accelerate with new partners, we're partnering for the first time with Point Blue Conservation Science for the restoration of Brushy Peak that brings the equity piece, the tribal piece, the ecological, the science, and the children. And so that we, again, unlike before, we issued a very large contract and we're partnering with them to advance Brushy Peak, which is one of the regional preserves that it's very complex, they all are. But people will say, why would you choose Brushy Peak? And it's so hard, precisely because it's so hard, we need to do something. And then there's the community engagement piece. How we engage with our communities and how do we tap into meaningful stakeholder engagement that meets the goals and the spirit of the governor's executive order and the pathways to 30 by 30 that is genuine, sincere, and results for environmental and social justice issues in an equitable way. And that's a great segue. This is your role. This is why we're here. And I understand, and I'm really glad that we're crystallizing your contributions and your contribution to the legacy of the good work and the work that needs to happen here. And so with that, I wanted to show you, and I started this meeting by telling Eric, if the only thing I had to do was community engagement, what a beautiful job that would be. That would be like my dream job, to be here with you every time you meet. Because I come from community grassroots organizing before I finished my undergraduate degree. I understand very well the power of community, and I believe in the power of community, and community defined by children, the elderly, the adults, and the academic institutions, the faith institutions, and the health institutions. And so we need you more than ever. So this is our first step out as you represent the community. We're going to be doing some body of work with you at the next meeting. And to get you motivated and inspired, as one of our national new partners, the East Regional Park District is partnering with Hispanic Assets Foundation to understand some of these issues of equity. And this week we're celebrating, and we're in the middle of the Latino Advocacy Week. And I forced myself, because I don't have enough minutes in the day, to sit through and listen through a piece that was very moving, the latest science and the latest numbers of how impactful these extreme weather events have been in the Latino community and what they did in return, the power of community. So this is a group of people that are coming together, and they, true to the Latino culture or the Latinx communities, music moves my people. So they created a song and they have people singing it. So Yuli, do you mind putting on the video? And that's my way of saying I welcome your thoughts and your partnership in your own way, being your own community, and I'm sharing a little bit of my community and my culture.
Te tengo aquí conmigo, algún día partirás, me quedaré con tu herencia, ¿qué legado dejarás? A un camino de tu mano, aún dependo de tu actuar, el futuro de este mundo aún lo puedes rescatar. Lucha por mí, lucharé por ti, y vota por los niños. Algún día recordaré lo que por mí lograste. Lucha por mí, lucharé por ti, y vota por los niños. Algún día recordaré lo que por mí lograste. I'm still young and need your hand while I grow and take a stand. Will you help protect our planet? Will you help protect this land? I still have you at my side, but one day we'll say goodbye. I'll inherit what you left me. May your legacy bring life. Please fight for me. I will fight for you. And vote for all who fought. And for all the children. One day I hope to speak before your few and your wisdom for tomorrow. May it bring you help. Lucha por mí. Lucharé por ti. Y vota por los niños. Los niños. Algún día recordaré lo que por mí lograste hacer. Tu legado me acompañará para poder seguir.
Thank you, Julie. So I hope that your legacy and your contributions will contribute and bring life. Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for that very powerful presentation, Dr. Alvarez. I'm sure that there are lots of questions that the PAC has. I'm glad that this is just the beginning of the conversation. In fact, that's what I heard you say. And I heard you mention how there will be opportunities for us to participate. I think I'll start with just one question in terms of, could you help us better understand what participation on our part as PAC members, as members who are involved with community engagement could look like? I'll kick off that question and then see what questions other folks have.
Thanks for the question, Chair. It's a good segue to comment on what comes next. Dr. Alvarez mentioned that the Park District is being looked at as a model, but I think we also said that we can do better. And so we do want to engage this group. And there were some great pictures of our staff meeting or gathering about 30 by 30, the Brazilian room pictures that you all saw in the presentation. I think we had about 90 staff there, at least 3 board members, maybe 4. And it was pretty much a whole day event. And so what we're proposing to do with the PAC is not drain your social battery and come back with this item again in April and do the breakout sessions like we did at the Brazilian room, where we had staff and different tables. You saw some of the pictures with Dee. So we want to do a similar thing. If weather cooperates and the Brown Act cooperates, we would like to do it outside. But we'll have at least 4 breakout groups, one on community engagement, one on finance and advocacy, one on partnerships, and one on sustainable operations and climate resiliency. And we'll have an opportunity for PAC members to attend to at least 2 of those breakout groups. We're going to try to do it in 20-minute blocks. And as part of those breakout groups, we're going to be asking you questions that we'd like to get input on. And so one question is, what are some examples of what the Park District does that are in alignment already with 30 by 30? What are some areas where we can improve? And what additional thoughts would you like to have as part of the conversation? All this information will be in your packet for next month. It's already pretty well written, so we'll have Dr. Alvarez review it and we'll get it out to you all early for the next meeting. And then there's an interesting question that we'll ask, and we'll have it up on you can put sticky notes under the board, where the question will be, which of the 30 by 30 key principles should the Park District prioritize? 1, protect and restore biodiversity. 2, improve equitable access to nature for all and reflect the needs and interests of local communities. And 3, mitigate and build resilience to climate change through climate smart land management. So we're hoping to have a pretty full day or evening at the April meeting. And also hoping to have some fun now that we're in person, trying to get folks back to being used to interacting with each other.
Great. So it sounds like tonight, if I understood correctly, was the first opportunity for us to receive this information. And then this is going to be one of these opportunities that we've been talking about for several months about, you know, how can we be engaged and more hands-on, if you will. And so it sounds like this is kind of one of the first opportunities to come out of that conversation. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, absolutely. This is Ana Alvarez. And I would say, I would really encourage all of you to please engage, and we want to hear from you. We definitely, your input will be considered as we are aligning the work plans, and we're having conversations with our board, and we're having to reprioritize our current workloads and work objectives. And you, all of you, can contribute to all of that. That's your primary role here. We want you to speak up, be engaged. We really want to learn from you. What are the things that you think that we can do better? The things that you think we can accelerate and push forward, the things that should be thought differently. Because you're representing, in the way I see the PAC, and I have many conversations with our general manager, Sabrina Landreth, with Eric, with board members of the role of the PAC. And I have not been as engaged with you, because as you see where I've been in other places, but I see and I feel that your role is so critical, because you're the gatekeeper of 2.9 million people. You are the first step in understanding our community engagement. And so we're coming to you first, and we want to hear from you.
Thank you. So now, hopefully folks can help me out, because I can see you, but not that well. So if folks want to ask questions, and if you could just be so kind as to hold up the microphone when you're talking so that everybody on Zoom can hear what you have to say. And it looks like I see Luana, and then I see someone else. So maybe Madam Secretary, if you can help me identify the other hand, because I can just see Luana in the screen. So Luana, please go first.
I had a question about the different lands, and you said not all the coastal lands qualify right now, that there were some things that had to be logged. So how does different land qualify to be considered part of the 30 by 30 lands, and kind of what are the major barriers?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to have planning come back and make a full presentation as soon as we reconcile all of that, but at very, very high level. The lands that we currently manage are not qualifying from the criteria and the many layers and requirements that have been put together by the California Natural Resources Agency and the governor's office. And it's really all about reconciling numbers. That's the easiest way that I can answer this. But there's a database, and I said I was going to share resources. We'll make sure that those links are in your packet. And I invite you to dive into the links into California Nature website, because for the first time, the public at large can log in and understand what counts, what doesn't count, and the reasons why by parcel. So it's a huge database. But it's made publicly because it's also the 30 by 30 brings a large component of transparency in how we do our work and making all this available. And it's been quite a journey, just reconciling multiple sets of data systems from over 26 regulatory agencies. So California Nature is the place where you can find all those details. And I'll have our planning staff come and make a presentation and walk through the visuals with you and explain to us how do we fit into all of that, and what may remain that we're not. But I don't anticipate anything to remain on the table. Yeah. Does that help?
It helps a little bit as far as understanding there's more layers to look at, but I guess for me, I was wondering if some of those barriers, and it seems like you've alluded to, might be removable, or is there like certain different criterias that you might have to make a few adjustments as a park district and how you manage something for it to qualify? I don't know enough about it, but I was just kind of surprised that as far as it was that stringent and everything. Yeah.
Yes, so there, I anticipate that there will be issues of questions about management of natural resources, like, not surprising, 8 bodies of water. What is the dredging schedule and how does that impact water quality?
Okay.
That's an example of very high level. Or it could be as simple as you acquire a former ranch land.
Mhm.
Did you remove all the fences to allow the passage of wildlife? So each parcel will have has its own set of checkpoints that they need to go through to be able to qualify and meet the definition of durability. And it's a lot of land. Yes.
Chair Obringer, I believe next was member Bruce Henry.
Thank you. Great presentation. So thank you very much. I had a question, and you may have answered it when you said let them in responsibly, but does strategic land acquisition and protecting land, does that mean putting it in a land bank? Or does it mean letting the public in?
Putting it on the land bank or letting the public in. And when we think about strategy for the 30 by 30 conservation, it's going to be let the public in. And I say that, and I will have had all staff here, they will be like, what? So I understand what, but it's really about letting the public in. And so the model before that, we say we're going to protect the land from the developers, so it's safe. Then we're going to put it on the side until we feel we're ready to open it, and we're going to bank it. And now that we're ready to open it, we're going to do a staging area, and we're going to utilize the existing roads as trails. And we may remove one fence or two. We'll put a sign, and that's the park. No, it's not. It's the new model of conservation. It's much more, requires much strategy and thoughtfulness of making sure people feel that the land, first and foremost, that they're public lands and they belong to people, and people belong in those spaces. What's in that space, and why does that matter? So the connections with nature, the programmatic element, the signage that we use, and how we manage the land, the practices, and how we talk about and communicate publicly, transparency, what's happening to that land. And if there are sensitive biological areas, that we identify them and that we explain why they're sensitive, and say we're not riding the trail this way because we're protecting, and explain that at the forefront. And then the hard piece, of course, is the enforcement. So all of this is all good, but good for nothing if there's no enforcement. And that's a difficult discussion and a pathway that needs to, and process that we need to go through as an organization, to say that we are going to hold people accountable when they destroy sensitive habitat. And it's not an easy conversation, but it's a conversation that must be had.
Thank you for that question, Committee Member Henry. Is there anybody else who has a question for Dr. Alvarez?
Chair Obringer, next we have member Dieter.
Great.
Thank you for the great presentation. I have a question about how all the cattle grazing fits into this climate situation, and if that area of the Park District land is going to be revisited.
Thank you for the question. That's a very important consideration, and we call them working lands or graze lands. And there's a whole and we have science that says that graze lands, when they're grazed correctly, can actually contribute to the carbon sequestration that we're trying to achieve. And we also have science that shows that, in fact, it's a good land management practice if it's done correctly. And so what we're doing is we're partnering with Point Blue Conservation Science and with the state and waiting to see there's a whole section of gracelands to understand not only the best management practices, but also what are the barriers for agencies to be able to achieve those that we're contributing to, and that will be shared in the fall of 2023. So we'll learn more about it. But the Park District is partnering in understanding the science and communicating the science, which will be done in the fall of 2023. There's workshops and links in your packet. I'm going to send you links of the last documents that speaks to all of that. And it's a beautiful body of work. And now it's through the 30 by 30. All of those science, all that science and all those planning documents, they're being had with discipline in one conversation with one regulatory agency saying yes or no, which has never been before. So we're no longer, like I said, we're not debating the sciences anymore. Rather, we're blessing what we know and we're moving forward. We're moving forward. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. We're moving forward. Because those are to continue debating to the deniers or the people that disagree with us, it takes a lot of time, energy, and it's a distraction. And I said that publicly because I'm unapologetically a public servant and I believe in process and public participation, but I also, it weighs very heavily on me, the urgency to do this work.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else?
Yes, Chair Obringer, I believe in this order, we have Member Scaredoff, Member Tetsui, and Member Corkin.
Great.
Green light and everything, okay. It's so reassuring to see that little green light come on. Thank you so much. I think I'm overwhelmed, actually. You've given me more than I can handle tonight. I'm probably, it's going to take me a while to process all this, and I probably forget more than I remember, so I'll need to get refreshed. Because it's a really big topic, and I think that a couple of observations. One of them is I think it's really great that the Park District is playing this kind of a role, because if we can make this stuff work anywhere, you'll be here. You've got a lot more capability, knowledge, spirit, all that other kind of stuff embedded in this organization and on these lands than anywhere else around. Perhaps other, posts maybe somewhat like that as well, but if this can be made to work, this is where it'll happen first. And so I think there's a great responsibility to make this work, to help get it like off to this running start and get out of the things that are holding back. Just say, go, we're moving on. Science is clear, and this is what we need to do, and we're moving ahead with it. And a lot of the land in the SAR area is privately held, and we're not going to succeed unless that also gets appropriately managed. And so my hope is that as the Park District succeeds in demonstrating and showing how this can be done, that this can be exported to private lands. I'm with the Resource Conservation District. We work a lot with private landowners, and we certainly want to be your ally in making that connection. So from the very beginning, we'd love to take part in that.
Well, thank you so much. And you are part of it. And I didn't mention the natural resource districts, but you are very much a part of it. And it's through the partnerships with your organizations that we're able to do a lot of the work in working on a water infrastructure for the grace lands. So thank you.
So we can be a link to the private sector in a lot of ways, and we're working on that as well. And the idea of using nature-based solutions, I think is a real key element that needs to be front and center. you can't say it enough times that we can't just concrete our way out of this. And our own flood control district in Contra Costa County is coming around to that way of thinking. They're realizing that they can't just continue to build more flood control channels, that they've got to do more things to let the land absorb water when it spreads out, give it places to spread out. And just the example that happened down recently in the Pajaro River, where it flooded the town there.
Pájaro. Mhm,
Well, the poor town was built in the
Right.
floodplain,
mhm.
you know? I'm sure the people who are living in that town had nothing to do with deciding where it was going to be located. But somewhere along the way, we ignored all that and said, oh, I'm putting a town here. And so that's a real good lesson of not just ignoring the natural process or the natural landforms or their function, but going with them. And I was so happy to hear you repeatedly say nature-based solutions, that that's really the way it's going to have to work. So thanks again so much. And boy, you know, I'm getting pretty old. I can't carry any more of this stuff.
I know.
I'll do my best.
Thank you. We need you. Yes.
Thank you, Igor. Vice Chair Tsutsui.
Yeah, so thank you so much for that inspiring and informative presentation. It was really great. So my question is a bit, I don't want to get into the weeds too much about it, but my question is about the allocations. It's really exciting because it's a lot of money. We'll be able to do a lot with that. But I'm a little unfamiliar with the sort of process and timeline. And so I think Eric alluded to this, that, you know, maybe we'll hear a lot more about this and talk about this a lot more in future meetings. But for now, at just a very high level, are we expecting that the Park District will be applying for grants over, you know, it's an enormous amount of money. Is this going to be compressed into a very small timeline over 5 years? Or do we expect that these are projects that we're going to be getting money for and then distributing across 10 years, 20 years? So the timeline is one question. And then the second is, I think something just much more basic is about the process. Is the sort of flow of funds from the state to lower level agencies like Department of Water District or Coastal Commission or Natural Resources, and then we apply to those departments for the funding directly?
Well, thank you, Neil. I'll answer very big, and Eric will chime in with the details. But so you just hit, your question actually speaks to one of the challenges that we're having. One of the many conversations that we had at the table with key decision makers to say this flood of richness that we find ourselves in is starvation, feast of famine, right? So here's this flood of money, and how is it going to be distributed? And it created a choke point fiscally, because they have to spend the money by certain time period, by the fiscal year. Some money can be encumbered and carried over. So the decision was made, the majority of the money will funnel through existing programs, grant programs, and then other parts, another percentage, another chunk of that money will be new programs. And then the state is engaging in block grants for with third-party vendors or institutions, and allowing those entities to be the ones that are granting through subcontracts the money. And that was the way to be able to release or resolve for that choke point. And Point Blue Conservation Science is a perfect example. First time in the history, for those of you who may know, Point Blue Conservation Science has been in existence, gosh, over 90 years, comes out of Point Reyes, the Palomar station. And it has grown so much that they're operating for the first time. The growth, they became the selected NGO to distribute $50 million of block grants for multiple pieces. And Point Blue is going to be subcontracting to be able to do that work very quickly in the Sierras and other geographical locations in California. And that's a new way that we're seeing that they're trying to release the funding and to resolve for the choke point. Another way is through direct state allocations. Even though the grant is a mechanism to get the money to the organization, it's really a direct allocation from the state. So the Park District has already benefited from that, and we hopefully will continue to benefit, because being touted as the example to follow, the state also said we're going to put our money where our talk is. And it's through a $10 million direct allocation that we were able to accelerate the pilot project on fuel vegetation management, to demonstrate to other agencies that this work can be done through a bioactor carbonator. So that's another example. The money continues to change and flow, but Eric, who leads our finance ad hoc committee, to where the intersection of policy and legislation and money comes together, can give you more details. Anything else, Eric?
Just so as was correctly pointed out, we kind of have this fiscal cycle in California that's up and down depending on how, frankly, how the stock market's doing. But last year there was $54 billion allocated for this work, and it was originally planned to be allocated over 3 years. In the governor's budget announcement in January, he kept 48 billion in, which is significant given that we have a deficit close to that much. So we anticipate applying aggressively for when it comes online, and it does come through the different agencies. So Coastal Conservancy, WCB, Wildlife Conservation Board. But in addition to that, when the governor made the announcement about the budget, he introduced the concept of a resources bond. And so we will be advocating with the legislature and potentially testifying for different allocations in the bond that align with the 30x30 goals. And we're also aligning those with our 7 advocacy goals as a government and legislative affairs team. So it'll align everything nicely, and we can bring that back to this group at a future meeting. But it's very much on our radar, and it's very much on our radar to try to break off big chunks of funding as soon as we are able to do so staff-wise, frankly.
And then one more thing that I like to add is that the 30x30 is pushing the state bureaucracy in the budgeting office, because we're saying if the directions from the governor to accelerate all of this, because 7 years go in, it's like a second in large bureaucracy, second. And so that we have to do business differently. So there's legislation that we're supporting, and that's going through the process to say, or if you're interested in the budget, a budgeting mechanics piece is that the general funds from the state cannot be advanced to cannot be advanced. Basically, you have to spend the money, do the work, and then bill the state after you do the work. Well, the reality is that most agencies don't have the means to do the work and then bill the state. So they're saying, give us the money ahead, and then we can do the work. And so we got into this accounting glitch. And so there's legislation that says for anything based on nature-based solution that speaks to the urgency of being able to respond and create resiliency to this climate change or changing climate and extreme weather patterns, you can't hold us to your accounting budgeting systems because you're slowing us down. And it's creating a lot of conversation. But yeah, they need the money. Agencies need the money.
One of the biggest barriers to money flowing are permits. And that's one thing that the Park District has been, we have so many, we take projects right to the point where permits are already pending. And that's why we're so successful in getting a lot of our grants, because we have that flexibility. We have the budget to take our projects to that level, to where the permits are either pending or applied for, and then once the permits are approved, we're already shovel ready. That's one of the successes of the Park District, is that we have the funding to basically front some of that money so that we can get that. But we've been lobbying in Sacramento and in Washington DC about fast tracking some of the green projects for permitting processes, because we cannot be treated like Walmart or, we're not building a development. We are actually a nature-based, we're doing nature-based work. So that's some of the things the board has been really advocating for in Sacramento and DC.
Okay, well, thank you. And we had another question. Was it, it was a female
Yeah.
member of the board.
It was member Corkin, and then
Okay.
it seems that member Scaredoff would like to have a follow-up question. Corkin, and then Bob Peoples. I had to Bob Simmons, not Bob Peoples. So let's go with Corkin, Bob Simmons, and then member Scaredoff. Is that okay with everyone?
Dr. Alvarez, the Park District has a 5-year project budget where funding's already somewhat committed. Will the 30 by 30 goals modify that 5-year budget commitment?
We don't have, if you're making a reference to the capital projects, so most agencies, public agencies have a 5-year capital improvement program, and we're not quite there yet. We would love to get there, and I'm hoping that we can get there in this year, if not next year. It's certainly one of the key priorities for our general manager, but we're not quite there. What we have done and what we have here at the Park District is an annual budget, and allocations are made every year towards a project. And each project is at a different stage, and it has its own life cycle. But and that's a very difficult portfolio to manage. There's over 96 projects, to give you an idea. So last year, and much to the credit of our general manager Landreth, a criteria to prioritize capital projects was adopted as a means of a policy, and with that criteria, we were able to look at the current projects that we have on hand, and the criteria worked really well. And a new feature, and the reason why it matters, is that we were able to put into practice in that criteria key elements that are truly important for the success of the mission of the district, one being equity. So for the first time, the Park District has criteria that speaks to equity for capital projects. And the other key element to your question is the alignment towards acceleration of conservation. And that's also included in that criteria. And so what makes it really challenging and very interesting for us here at the Park District is that everything that we do has a nexus to 30 by 30 because of the nature of our organization. So now the reaction is then what gets prior. So you're having to have a very difficult conversation because every project matters and every project contributes to 30 by 30. So now the conversation gets more difficult because every distinguishing factor really matters. Unlike if we were a city, a municipality, it's a lot easier to discern from general hospital, the libraries, or conservation. Everything that we do here is conservation, but then what are the key pieces that will get us that cutting edge and that really matter? And so if you were to talk to all of the staff here, everything matters. And I agree with them, everything matters, but we can't do everything. And if everything matters, then nothing really matters. So we're having those difficult conversations, and we already made some headways, like I said, with that policy criteria for the CIP, for the capital projects. And we already made a commitment as an organization to get to a 5-year capital improvement program.
Okay, thank you. I just to follow up, in your discussions with the broader state group, where the levies sit in all of that? So that, I mean, we have a lot of tributaries that run through communities, a lot of potential pajaros. So I'm wondering how are levies stacked up on the priority list?
I have not been part of any conversations regarding levies. My focus has been, and my contributions have really focused on ecological systems. And I know that there's a whole section of the 30 by 30. Well, it's actually part of the infrastructure bill. And the water discussions can be very complex, and that's where those discussions are taking place.
Okay,
And I have not been part of those.
thank you.
Do you know anything?
Just that there is a very clear awareness in the Bay Area of the pending sea level rise, and with these atmospheric rains, we're seeing additional surges. And so the big question is, how do you pay for what they're calling managed retreat, which is essentially doing restoration work along the shoreline that anticipates sea level rise increasing. But those are very expensive projects, and they're also multi-jurisdictional. And so I know Dr. Alvarez has been on the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority Advisory Committee. They are authorized to spend $500 million over 20 years. We're probably talking about a $40 to $50 billion issue. So there has been some discussion about, is there a regional role for perhaps what is used to be called MTC? I think they're Bay Metro now. Is there a role there that a regional authority might be able to, a metropolitan planning organization might be able to help coordinate the work, and then also help with the funding, whether it's through some type of a regional measure specifically for the Bay or some other mechanism. But it's a very serious issue, and there's a lot of energy into discussing it. But the bottom line is we really need everybody kind of working together, because as we mentioned, we manage 55 miles of shoreline, and when a levee is overtopped in Hayward, we're the ones paying for it. When Alameda, Crown Beach erodes, we're the ones paying for the sand replacement. We're the ones that paid for the Dotson Family Marsh, which is a managed retreat marsh. So we really need to be working with our cities and counties to make sure that there's enough resources, but it's really a regional, state, and frankly national issue. And just one last thing, you might appreciate this. The countries that are the most engaged in really addressing climate change are all the island nation states that are fearful of what's going to happen with the sea level rise. So we're not alone, but we really need some aggressive action on the funding piece of it.
Chair Obringer, I think Member Peoples was next.
Thank you for your presentation. I know you talked a lot about getting all the current lands the Parks District controls included in 30 by 30, but it's unclear to me how much of an emphasis in the future on this is to acquire additional properties so that we can make up that shortfall between where we are today and reaching the 30% level, not only statewide, but, what kind of contributions can be made here in the East Bay towards making up that shortfall?
Thank you for the question. It's an excellent question, because there's so much to, as you already shared with me. It's a lot of moving pieces. It's a lot of information and over 200 strategies. I just share with you the 10 principles, the framework. But acquisition remains the number one and most powerful tool. So we're not moving away from acquisition. It continues to be the primary tool for conservation. It's the first step, basically. And so we're not shying away at all in terms of acquisition. Actually, we're having very candid conversations. How can we expedite and prioritize what has been on the books for a couple of decades? Because prior to 30 by 30, we had to wait for the right opportunity to be able to acquire that land. And that opportunity is defined by multiple factors that create the right conditions that completely outside our control, funding being one of them, but aside, or the willingness to sell, right? And with 30 by 30, now we have the right catalytic vehicle to be able to jumpstart or continue to accelerate some of the acquisition work that was already in play. So acquisition remains the number one tool that we're prioritizing here at the Park District, and it's a key priority for the general manager. What makes it really tricky is that we continue to not be able to openly speak to what are those pending transactions. So we cannot share with you, we're looking at this for many reasons, but we do anticipate that you're going to be very, very satisfied with the fact that good things will come through acquisition in a year or less, in a year or two, and you will be seeing in real tangible actions that in fact we were able to accelerate some of this work because of 30 by 30.
Thank you.
And see, I didn't say anything from closed session. Isn't that weird?
I think we're going back to committee member Skardoff now for a second bite at the apple, so to speak.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I just wanted to second what Dr. Di Rosario was just talking about. The money that flow that's connected with the permitting and actually getting the work done. The way most of the money flows is you do the work, you pay the contractors, and then you wait for the state to reimburse you. And that's a hard way to live. And when we're trying to get small landowners, private landowners to do that, that's very hard. To some degree, we can cushion some of that by providing the money up front and then sort of carry the deficit. Our budget generally looks bad because of that. There's always the question of why is this negative? Well, here's why, the way it all works out. So anything that any movement in the direction of getting the money more upfront and not waiting till after everything is done before paying for it will greatly facilitate getting things done in everywhere. Because if you don't get paid till you finish the project, it's a very hard way to actually muster the resources to actually do the work. You can have all the goodwill and everything else in hand. And so I just wanted to applaud your efforts to make a change in that respect. As a public agency with RCD can't campaign on stuff like that. But the individuals we can. So I want to thank you for that.
Okay, well, thank you. Is there anybody else who has a question on this agenda item? Okay, I don't see anybody in my line of sight. I don't hear anybody. So again, I'm just going to say thank you, Dr. Alvarez, and just a very powerful presentation, and hopefully you hear the enthusiasm from the PAC about engaging in this important work. So thank you again.
You're welcome,
Okay.
and I invite all of you to continue being conservation champions, and we'll find the way for you to get engaged as much as you want to be engaged. We certainly are looking forward, perhaps one opportunity is to be an ambassador and help us make presentations, get the word out into the communities. Whoever wants to join me, I'm trying to get into the Girl Scouts to see the Girl Scout, the new CEO for Girl Scouts, because you'll appreciate being Women's Month. If you want a movement to move, you start with scouting. So I'm going to try to get them all excited about 30 by 30. And I will welcome anybody who wants to come with me in getting the community excited about being conservation champions like yourselves. Thank you.
Great. And I think you're also, hopefully we've got that scheduled with you coming to the Contra Costa Mayor's Conference. I know I've been, trying to connect you with those folks. That's another great group for you to speak to, Dr. Alvarez.
Absolutely.
Many others. Okay, great. All right, well, thank you. I'm going to close this agenda item, and then next up on the agenda, we have, let's see, it looks like staff comments. So item number 6, do we have anything would you like to share with us, Eric?
Just real quickly, I wanted to share that the field trip or the site visit for the PAC is September 16th. And it will be, Dr. Alvarez referred to the biochar facility that we have. It's a machine called a carbonator. So we will be bringing the PAC to the site at Anthony Chabot where the work on tree mortality has been ongoing. It's actually very impressive to see the before and after. But we'll take this group on site and have some of our stewardship folks and our fire folks discussing what's been done. But it's a real model for the nation, and we're happy to share it.
That sounds really interesting. Look forward to that. Okay, next item on our agenda, PAC member comments. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment from the PAC? Committee member Scarda.
To be on the air so much, but I just wanted to let you know that we're going to be celebrating Earth Day at the John Muir National Historic Site on 22nd. And typically East Bay Parks is a big part of that, and invite you all down there, and you can decide whether this is an incentive or a disincentive, but I'm going to be emceeing it, so.
Sounds great. Thank you. And so where is that again?
It's at the John Muir National Historic Site in Martinez.
Great. Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Yes, Director Rosario.
Yeah, I just wanted to talking about where the rubber meets the road, the Briones pilot project. I just want to let you folks know that we're still receiving comments, and to let your constituents or people that you know that are interested in the project to they can make comments. Just go on our website and type in Briones pilot project, and it has its own website so people can make comments and see the updates and maps. All that information is there, but groups and individuals are still continuing to make comments, so please feel free to pass that on. Talk about recreation versus preservation. That this is a huge project. So, but it's also a pilot project, not only what can be done, but also we talked about it. What can we? It'll also be a pilot for what we can do as an agency to enforce. So I don't think there is a closing date. So yeah, but the sooner the better. And then the other thing coming down the pike, I think either the next meeting or the meeting after, you'll be getting the electrical bike policy discussion. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, well, we will be prepared for that. Anybody else? I see somebody raising a hand next to Vice Chair Tsutsui.
That's member Susie Claxton.
Hi, thank you. In addition to the ambassadors, there are a whole slew of docents who assist in natural history programs at the parks. And I'm a docent, and so I don't want you to forget, I'm sure the docents would love to be involved in spreading the word, not only to children that come to programs, but also adults. And of course, summer is a time when we have all these festivals. I know the ambassadors are busy, but so are parks and their docents. So any kind of information you could give, spread for us to spread the word would be great. Oh, stickers. I'm not sure if they're sustainable. That's the only problem with stickers. But they do get a communication point across. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. We're going to move on to report from chair. I don't have too much to report other than I think we've almost successfully completed our first hybrid meeting, which is very exciting. So thank you to staff for all of your efforts to, help make this happen. And thank you to the technology for working. And I did want to acknowledge, we do have, and I do apologize, I believe it's Denisha Marsh, who has joined us today on Zoom. And Ms. Marsh will be joining us soon as one of our new members of the Park Advisory Committee. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we're going to be having a new colleague joining us, an appointee from Director Coffey very soon. So just wanted to make you feel welcome today, Denisha, and thank you for joining us so that you can see what the PAC is all about and be ready to jump in and be up to speed at our next meeting once you are appointed. And we'll have you introduce yourself at that time.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And we don't have any board committee reports. I don't think there's any old business. I'm going to ask Eric if we have any new business.
Just, well, one thing is we'll have to make sure that you get a water bottle and t-shirt. We have them here for members to pick up. Kind of a welcome back to being in person. And then one other thing that we will be seeking clarification from legal counsel on actually later this week, but it's our understanding under AB 2449 that if a PAC member or any committee member of a Brown Act committee misses 4 meetings, then they're considered to be no longer part of the committee. So, but we'll get some clarification from legal counsel, and we'll be sending that out to the group.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, I believe that is it for today. So thank you all very much. I wish you a good evening, and we will see you in April. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.